tucked away in the Oxfordshire countryside, is a prison that rarely makes headlines, rarely draws protest, and almost never sees a camera crew. Yet inside the brick and metal maze of HMP Bullingdon lies one of the most quietly dysfunctional and damaging institutions in the entire British prison estate. Officially a Category B local and resettlement prison, Bullingdon is supposed to house men who are either awaiting trial, serving short sentences, or preparing for release. What actually exists within its walls is a volatile stew of overcrowding, violence, drugs, racial tension, psychological collapse, and systemic neglect. The 2022 inspection report exposed what insiders have known for years, that Bullingdon is not a place of correction or progression. It is a place of warehousing, punishment by proxy, and institutionalized despair. For those unlucky enough to pass through its gates, it often becomes a graveyard for hope. Originally built to hold around 870 prisoners, Bullingdon routinely operated at levels approaching 1,100. The overcrowding is not just numerical, it is spatial, emotional, and psychological. Cells built for one man now house two. Some are so cramped that inmates sleep within arm's reach of open toilets. Ventilation is poor, heating is inconsistent, and many cells show signs of damp and mold. Showers are often broken or covered in grime. Toilets leak or back up. Access to cleaning materials is restricted. In one instance, inspectors found a prisoner who had gone 6 days without access to soap or a clean shirt. The prison claimed the wing staff were too busy to process his request. That phrase, "too busy," becomes a recurring theme. Too busy to open up, too busy to listen, too busy to prevent a suicide. Daily life in Bullingdon is shaped not by opportunity, but by lockdown. Time out of cell is minimal. For most prisoners, it averages between 2 to 4 hours a day, a number that plummets during staff shortages, which are frequent. On the worst days, prisoners are kept behind their doors for up to 23 hours, often without explanation. The result is predictable and poisonous: frustration, depression, violence, and self-harm. The ACCT system, which tracks those at risk of suicide or self-injury, is overloaded. Some prisoners are flagged multiple times without any meaningful follow-up. Others, as one staff member admitted, are monitored on paper only. One man had been placed on suicide watch after an attempt to hang himself in the shower. Days later, inspectors found him alone, unsupervised, with the same ligature still hidden under his bed. The mental health team was underfunded, overworked, and demoralized. A single psychologist, stretched across 4 wings, described his role as damage limitation at best. Drugs flow through Bullingdon like water, soaked into mail, passed through visits, or thrown over walls. Spice is the most common, followed closely by pregabalin and Subutex. Drug debts fuel a secondary economy of fear. Debtors are extorted, assaulted, or pressured into smuggling. Staff admitted that debt-related violence was now so common that it often went unrecorded. Prisoners described entire wings where certain cells were controlled by gang factions, some of them local, others connected to organized crime networks beyond the prison walls. Rivalries flare, alliances shift, and intimidation thrives in the blind spots of an overstretched security team. Body-worn cameras are inconsistently used. CCTV is under-monitored. Intelligence reports pile up unanswered. Violence is normalized, not because it is ignored, but because there is no longer the capacity to do anything about it. The staff, many of them young, undertrained and unsupported, are burning out. Morale is low. Absences are high. Wing officers are pulled from one crisis to the next, unable to build relationships or enforce consistent rules. The power dynamic shifts daily. In some wings, it is the prisoners who set the tone, deciding who comes out, who uses the phone, who gets protection. In others, staff attempt control through the only tool they have left: lockdown. Entire blocks are shut down because one man throws boiling water or another sets off an alarm. This creates a chain reaction of resentment. One wing blames another, one prisoner blames a rival. Rumors spread, retaliations follow. And all the while, staff retreat further from the landings, standing by doors with keys in hand, not eye contact. For black and ethnic minority prisoners, Bullingdon presents a double sentence. The inspection noted widespread perceptions of racial bias in adjudications, in punishments, in access to jobs and education. Complaint systems were viewed with suspicion. Few felt confident that issues raised about racism or abuse would be taken seriously. Some spoke of staff using racial slurs. Others described being passed over repeatedly for wing jobs or education slots. There was a sense of systemic exclusion, not just by individuals, but by the very culture of the institution. In one shocking case, a Muslim prisoner described having his prayer mat confiscated during a search. He was later found praying on a towel in the corner of a filthy cell. The imam, the report noted, visited infrequently and was unable to provide consistent pastoral support. Education and rehabilitation was supposed to be Bullingdon's saving grace. As a resettlement prison, it was meant to prepare men for release. But the reality is closer to educational collapse. Classrooms were frequently empty. Courses were cancelled without notice due to staff shortages. Library access was severely limited. Vocational training was tokenistic. A few barbering slots, some kitchen work, a basic construction course with minimal equipment. The education provider had no consistent presence on the wings, and many prisoners said they hadn't attended a single class in months. One man on a 6-month sentence said he had spent more time cleaning his cell than doing anything rehabilitative, and when asked what he had learned in Bullingdon, he replied simply, that I never want to come back. Healthcare was a similar story. Though an NHS provider nominally operated on site, delays were chronic. Appointments were routinely cancelled. Medications went missing. Chronic conditions, diabetes, epilepsy, asthma, were poorly managed. Dental care was virtually non-existent. One man had waited over 4 weeks for a tooth extraction, during which time he was prescribed only ibuprofen and paracetamol. Another man collapsed on the yard from a seizure. It later emerged he had been without his anti-epileptic meds for 3 days due to an administrative error. The prison apologized. The man said nothing. Like so many others in Bullingdon, he had learned that pain is not exceptional. It is routine. Perhaps the most damning indictment of HMP Bullingdon is that it is not a broken prison. It is a functioning one. Functioning exactly as the current system intends. It holds people. It contains crisis. It avoids scandal. But it does not rehabilitate. It does not protect. And it certainly does not deliver justice. It is a place where time passes, but nothing changes. Where staff drift. Where men rot. Where paperwork covers pain. And where every day behind the wall feels just a little more like punishment for its own sake. A prison officer was left humiliated when an inmate threw a bowl of poo and urine at him. Godwin Daoney, then 18, was said to have held no grievance towards the HMP Bullingdon officer, but had been told to pot the guard by a group of older prisoners on his wing. Mr. Daoney was due to be, and was, released from the Bicester prison a day after the attack on July the 12th, 2021. He was serving a short jail term for common assault when he was chosen to carry out the assault. Just weeks earlier, he was handed a 2-year suspended jail sentence for 3 robberies committed in August 2020. Jailing him for 3.5 years at Oxford Crown Court, recorder John Bate Williams described the poo flinging as a disgusting display of what is known inside prison as potting. He added, "It's not easy to think of a more disgusting and, I would say, cowardly thing to do." The youngster, who appeared before the court via prison video link from HMP Wandsworth, told the judge that he deeply regretted his actions against the Oxfordshire prison officer, as well as his past offending. He said he was engaging in education and trying to improve myself and my behaviour. Prosecutor Bethan Chichester said the victim was in an office on the wing at HMP Bullingdon on July 12, 2021, with the door to the room open so prisoners could come in with any queries. Mr. Daoney's vile attack was not captured on CCTV, but cameras caught him walking up to the office with the washing up bowl full of feces and urine. The defendant was said to have rushed into the office holding the bowl and threw its contents towards the prison officer. Some of the filthy mixture ended up in the officer's eyes and mouth. He was taken to hospital, where he received inoculations against tetanus and hepatitis. Ms. Chichester detailed the emotional impact on the man, who said he did not feel comfortable in his own skin and perpetually smells the liquid. He described feeling humiliated. He's shocked because there was no issue with Mr. Deone prior to this incident, the prosecutor said. Mr. Deone of Barley Lane, Ilford, pleaded guilty in March to administering a noxious substance with intent. In mitigation, it was said Mr. Deone had come under pressure from older prisoners to carry out the assault, although no mention was made to the prison authorities or the police about being forced to do what he did. A warrant was issued for his arrest when he failed to attend court last year. He was arrested in March after he was allegedly run over by his brother and left with significant leg and pelvic injuries. He had been diagnosed with sickle cell disease and was a carer to his mother, the court heard. The judge activated his 2-year suspended jail sentence in full and added a further 18 months imprisonment for the potting incident. A prisoner who tried to kill an officer at HMP Bullingdon near Bicester has been sentenced to a further 14 years behind bars. Kevin Jones, 41, was being escorted by a prison officer to his cell at around 10:10 a.m. on the 17th of July 2021 when he attacked the member of staff. Mr. Jones was a prisoner on the unit at this time and had a pre-existing grudge against the officer. He was seen on CCTV stalking the victim around the unit until they were both on the same landing at the same time, outside the wing office. As the prison officer walked past him, Mr. Jones pulled a sharpened plastic knife out of his pocket and lunged at the victim. He tried to make contact with the officer's neck, but was restrained on the floor by officers. In an interview afterwards, Mr. Jones admitted his intention was to stab and kill the officer with the weapon he had made. Mr. Jones was charged on the 22nd of June. Now of Broadmoor Hospital, Crowthorne, he was sentenced after pleading guilty to 1 count each of attempted murder and unauthorised possession in prison of a knife or offensive weapon at Reading Crown Court on Thursday the 25th of May. Investigating Officer P.C. Andrew Gold of the prison crime team said this was a very serious and unprovoked attack on a prison officer in the course of his duties. This is something Thames Valley Police simply will not tolerate and will always seek to bring offenders before the courts. Had the victim not been so alert as to the danger he was in and avoid the attack, the outcome could have been very different. Fortunately, the victim did not receive any physical injuries, but he has suffered mentally, such as stress and anxiety, which has affected both his professional and personal lives. I'm very pleased that the courts recognised the significant threat posed by Jones and imposed a substantial custodial sentence. Several psychiatrists were said to have recommended that prison guard attacker James McGregor, 34, was given a hybrid order under Section 45A of the Mental Health Act, meaning he could be detained in a psychiatric hospital until he was well enough to serve out the rest of his sentence in prison. But a gatekeeper assessment by an NHS psychiatrist, conducted by a doctor who assessed him for around an hour over a video link, had ruled he could not be detained at Marlborough House, Milton Keynes. In a plea to the judge at his son's sentencing hearing at Oxford Crown Court this week, Dad Roy said, "He's now stuck between a rock and a hard place where on the one hand people are saying he shouldn't go to hospital under a Section 37/41, a more serious Mental Health Act hospital order. That's not appropriate, and a Section 45A is being denied him." He added, "Every time he is about to have any form of mental health help, he has been moved from one prison to another. He is now back at Bullingdon. He's on remand. He's not getting any treatment. His condition has worsened." The court heard McGregor's record of offending began in 2019, culminating in a 4-year prison sentence imposed in 2020 at Aylesbury Crown Court. Judge Francis Sheridan Ahead of that sentencing hearing, McGregor had spent 12 weeks at an NHS hospital being assessed to see if he was suitable for a hybrid hospital order. It concluded that he may be suitable. Sentencing McGregor at Oxford Crown Court for a new set of offences this week, Recorder of Oxford, Judge Ian Pringle QC, said the Aylesbury judge had, for reasons best known to himself, decided against a hybrid order. It is quite likely he did not do so, first of all because the defendant was not engaging in seeking treatment, and secondly, the assessment was that James McGregor had a personality disorder and he could have sought help for that condition in prison. A similar problem faced Judge Pringle 2 years on. An NHS psychiatrist told him the treatment was available in the prison and he had been deemed ineligible for a place at Marlborough House. Jailing him for 2 years on Wednesday, the Oxford judge said, "I regret to say, because I would have wished to have made a hospital order if it was possible, that I cannot make one because the statutory criteria are not made out in this case. The clinician says it may be much easier, or easier, certainly, for the defendant to seek some assistance as a prisoner once he has been sentenced. Of course, under Section 47 of the Mental Health Act, he could be transferred to hospital if the prison thought that was appropriate." On June 3, 2019, McGregor bit a Buckinghamshire prison officer in the leg. The jailer had been called to restrain the prisoner, who had struck a fellow inmate and another guard. Later that year, on December 4th, and now in Bullingdon Prison, near Bicester, the defendant launched an unprovoked attack on another guard, punching him in the face and leaving him with 2 black eyes. On January 30th, 2020, a mental health nurse was talking to McGregor about a hospital showing an interest in admitting him. Prosecutor Alex Radley said he asked her to call him an ambulance. She asked why, and he said they would care for him. He went on to rain down punches on the woman. A prison guard who came to her aid was also struck. The final assault came on March 2nd. McGregor punched his mother, who was visiting him at the prison, then scrapped with the prison guard who came to her aid. McGregor, of HMP Bullingdon, admitted 2 counts of causing actual bodily harm and 3 assaults on emergency workers.